Good afternoon. Welcome back. My name is Manuel Roman. I am the Associate Director for the Center for Latin American Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. For our final event for the Latin American Social and Public Policy Conference of 2021, reiterating once again the first and hopefully last only virtual version of this wonderful conference. We have a director's roundtable. The title for the discussion that follows is The Potential of Latin American Study Centers in the United States. I have the pleasure of being in the company, at least virtually, but fortunately having known these people in person, three very special people to the Center for Latin American Studies. First and foremost, we have Carmelo Mesado, Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus of Economics and Latin American Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. He really doesn't need further introduction. He served as the director for the Center for Latin American Studies from 1974 to 1986, basically setting a standard and a firm foundation upon which the center is still working 56 years after its foundation. Carmelo is the author of 94 books, 318 articles in 8 languages, published in 34 countries. He has been president of the Latin American Studies Association, a member of the National Academy of Social Insurance and editorial board of 6 academic journals, the International Labor Organization Prize recipient on decent work, which he shared with Nelson Mandela, no less. We were fortunate also to screen a documentary about his life and work on Thursday night. I hope that you were able to watch it. We will have a copy available through the center and then eventually at the library. We also have, and Kayla will tell us about this a little bit later again, but I want to reiterate that we have a copy of his latest book on reflection on 4 decades of pension analysis in Latin America. So we also have with us a friend and another ally and former director of the Center for Latin American Studies at the University of Pittsburgh, Scott Morgenstern. He served between 2014 and 2018. He's a professor of political science and has been at the university since 2005. He was, his research focuses on political parties, electoral systems, and legislatures, and has a regional specialization in Latin America. A number of books authored, articles, and if you've had anything to do with the center, you also know about Scott's work. He leads a very successful series that we have, at his instance, we have been able to host since about June of last year, Charlemos. I invite you to participate in that. Every 3 weeks, we have a fantastic panel with all sorts of participants from all over the world. And then last, but certainly not least, is Kayla Grinberg, who is our incoming director for the Center for Latin American Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. And she is, she obtained her PhD at the Universidad Federal Fluminense. She will be also a professor of history in the history department at the University of Pittsburgh. She is from Rio de Janeiro, where she currently is sitting. And she, for many years, she has been a member of the history department at the Universidad Federal del Estado de Rio de Janeiro, as well as having been a visiting professor at Northwestern University, at the University of Michigan, as a Tinker Visiting Professor at the University of Chicago, and as the Andres Bello Chair in Latin American Cultures and Civilization at New York University. Her focus has been slavery and race in the Atlantic world, and she has authored and co-authored and edited several books and articles in Portuguese, English, Spanish, French, Russian, featuring in particular a Black jurist in slave society, Antonio Pereira Rebusas, in the trials of Brazilian citizenship, which is a finalist for the Frederick Douglass Book Prize. So without taking any more of your time, I want to open this discussion about the future and reflections on the role of centers of Latin American studies in the United States. And if I may, perhaps Carmelo, I know that you have some remarks that you have.
I think Keila should be first.
Okay, very well.
So I'll start with some remarks. First, I want to say that I'm incredibly honored to be joining Pitt's history department, but even more to be appointed director of the Center for Latin American Studies. And with some of the former directors, I just can say that I will do my best to keep the work that has been done and keep the incredible prestige that the center has in the US and also in Latin America. And I'm looking forward also to the discussions and to the conversations we can get about the centers and also about the field of Latin American studies. I also was thinking, as Manuel was introducing us, that it's interesting to see the perspective from three academics from related but not so similar fields. So I guess that some of the remarks that I will do is as a historian, and then we have political scientists and you have an economist, and maybe that that will become an interesting conversation about our different perspectives. But before I start, I want to say thank you to Manuel and all the staff that received me so well in Pitt. And I didn't arrive yet, but they're already receiving me so well. And I hope they don't regret when I'm actually there. Anyway, so I don't think I need to emphasize here, of course, to this audience, how important Latin America is to US academic institutions. Of course, we all know that Latin America presents academic institutions with both enormous opportunities and significant challenges. Latin America is critically important to the US and has been since the early decades of our post-independence nation states. Notwithstanding the attempts to build ineffective walls, the borders between the US and Latin America are incredibly porous. Latinx are the US largest ethnic minority, and Latin American countries are among the US most important economic partners. In Pittsburgh, despite the fact that the Latinx population is still small, it's a number that is growing, while the city's overall population has been declining since 2010. So as the demographics, and in the US as a whole, of course, are shifting, soon and hopefully the number of Latinx students will increase in the university. And by the way, that's why one of the initiatives, the recent initiatives at Pitt, the Latinx initiatives, is so important. So thinking about the relationship between the US and countries throughout Latin America, I think what is important to highlight is the crucial role of Latin American studies right now. In this moment when area studies have been reshaped away from their good neighbor and Cold War origins to become part of the broader discussion about global engagement. It's impossible to look at global issues and themes such as environment, global warming, migration, public policies, urban studies, human rights, democracy, and of course now public health, when Brazil is a threat to the whole world, without taking the knowledge produced in Latin America and Latin America into consideration. So I guess my first point is that Latin American studies and global studies have to be thought about always in relation to one another. So global perspectives change area studies in a very exciting and relevant way. and foremost by making clear the importance of deep knowledge of an area and a multidisciplinary approach. If we wanted to promote critical global thinking, if we want to think transnationally, if we wanted to find the most important global issues and their connections, we need to increase the depth of local research and study. In order to promote global discussions, we need to insist on our deep contextual understanding of a specific area. We need to know the language, the culture, the history. We can't go global without nurturing scholars who engage deeply with specific places. So I guess this is my, I was writing this and I was thinking about that, how we can find ourselves, specialists in Latin America, some from Latin America, some moving to the US. How, and this is a question that I'm thinking out loud. I think Latin American studies is more important than ever for the reasons I just said. I also think that if we don't promote local and deep understanding of the region, we'll find ourselves in maybe two traps. One trap is to go global without the specific knowledge. And everything now is global. But if we don't, global can provide us a good way or a good perspective to analyze anything if we don't have a deep knowledge about a region. And of course, we are specialists in one region or in a topic of a region. So that's one point. The other point, which is also tricky, is that the importance of the Latinx population in the US, which is absolutely crucial, is creating a new field or a subfield, which is the Latinx studies. And in some ways, we can't understand the Latinx population in the US without thinking about Latin America. But in the other ways, not everything about Latin America relates to the Latinx population in the US. So the two trends, which is global studies and local US agenda, are in the same way, they highlight the importance of Latin America. And in the same ways, they can reduce the study of Latin America to a special conjuncture. So what I'm trying to think as I join in is how we can address the study and the importance of Latin America per se, bringing its own importance in a way that we can collaborate and connect with the Latinx population in the US and the importance that it takes in the US, at the same time that we see the global issues from the perspective of a region. So I hope this has been clear. I don't wanna talk too much. I just wanna add maybe one comment, which is there are several ways I think that we can escape that double trap. But one way is perhaps engaging with Latin American institutions, research institutions, but also universities that are making a huge effort to decolonize their own way of thinking and their own knowledge. And the way they are doing this is by combining scholarship, teaching, and outreach with the knowledge produced in the communities and outside the universities. And many institutions in Latin America have been doing this in the past 20 and 30 years in a very provocative and a very creative way. So maybe one way to contribute to the debate and to show how important Latin America can be is to highlight the specific ways in which knowledge has been produced in this institution and how the communities, how the society is pressing the universities, how the research institutions such as Fiocruz that we have talked about in the past two days, how they connect to the societies in a way that is impossible now to disconnect and to think about universities as institutions that are not connected to the social movements or not connected to the population. So I don't know for how long I have been talking, Manuel, but I think that I would just end here with this idea. We have of what I think is the potential, the future, but also the traps, and leave this question. How can we go global? How can we go local? Thinking about the growth, the importance of growth of the Latinx population. And in between, how can we think of the place that Latin American studies deserves in the field in the US? So I'll leave it here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So, Scott, would you like to make your remarks?
Great. Let me just first publicly welcome Kayla. I'm really joining the crowds that are very excited about you getting here, and we've had a chance to talk, and I know about your creativity and energy, and we're really looking forward to having you here and putting new energy into what's been a wonderful legacy that Carmelo is part of the founding of. And so it's really great to have the two bookends, and to the CLAS staff, thank you for having me here. It's great to be a little part of this things. And thank you too for Kayla for your remarks about the global and local. And I'll say a little bit about that as well, and look forward to the discussion about it. Those of us who are involved in Latin American studies really love it. We learned about the region, we became fascinated with it, its challenges, its opportunities, both in terms of its economics, its politics, the colorful characters and leaders, the landscapes, its food, the art, its history, and of course, the really warm people there. And this fascination with the region has driven our careers. And CLAS and other Latin American studies centers have supported our work in this fascination. And the goal is to bring more people into the fold. This talk that I prepared is about the mission and the challenges of CLAS. And so this led me to reread the mission statement that we wrote while I was the director. And I'm going to read it to you. It's short. The Center of Latin American Studies at the University of Pittsburgh promotes global understanding through support of teaching, learning, and research in and on Latin America, the Caribbean, and the diverse diasporic communities of Latin America and Caribbean origin. The center provides faculty with the resources and intellectual environment to realize cutting-edge research and students with unequaled educational experience and a solid path to a successful career. Through its community engagement programs, CLAS shares its resources regionally, nationally, and internationally. I really believe in this mission, and I think it's really, really valuable. But CLAS and other centers here and around the country are, as Kayla suggested, sort of under threat. And we're having to defend our work as area study centers. And we're finding it harder and harder to gain the scarce resources that are necessary. Overall, I really think that the role of the university, and CLAS specifically, is to foster this love of learning and the scholarship with a focus on Latin America. And your big job, Kayla, is going to be to keep pushing back against the threats, these anti-regional studies trends and the globalization, and finding money to support the scholars and students in that effort. Our mission, that I read before, suggested 3 basic roles for CLAS. That is serving students, serving the faculty, and serving the community. And so I'm going to divide the rest of my talk about those 3 things, starting with the faculty. Professors need an environment that fosters continued involvement with the region and colleagues to exchange ideas with. They need opportunities to present their work, to invite outside speakers, and to pique their interests, and to travel. They need to bring people together, as in this type of conference, on special topics, and to deepen our understanding and push forward various research projects. There's no other place on campus for this type of organization. Professors have lots of ideas for a conference or a speaker, but they don't have the time or infrastructure to do it themselves. They therefore rely on the Center for Latin American Studies and others to put these things together. A first role of CLAS, I think, is therefore to support the ideas that bubble up from the faculty around the campus, provide that infrastructure. There's also a serious role for CLAS to provide the ideas and get others involved, and that's where your creativity and that of your staff comes in, to motivate and encourage people to participate and to bring other people and new people along in these journeys. You need to defend these interests at the university events and making sure that Latin America is an important consideration in things that are going on. The second issue for CLAS, I think, is transferring this excitement and love and fascination of the professor. And I don't want to leave out the staff, by the way. The dedicated, wonderful, staff comes up with all kinds of wonderful ideas and are really, really dedicated. So excuse me if I didn't say them before. But to transfer some of that enthusiasm to the undergraduate students. I'll mention the graduates in a minute. As professors, we meet students who are incredibly ignorant. And I mean that in just, they don't know about the region, and that's our role. Every year when I teach Latin American politics, which actually I've taught now for a while, but my first day I ask students, think of an adjective, what do you think when you think of Latin America? And the first things that you almost always hear are drugs, war, corruption, and all kinds of other negative things. And very seldom do they say things like family or biodiversity or democracy, which is the focus of my class even that I'm going to be teaching them. But by teaching them about the topics as wide as, Carmelo especially on pension reforms, or what you've worked on, and racism in the region, and giving them opportunities to visit the region, the CLAS field trip, really deserves a special call out here. It opens their eyes to the world, and some are inspired to spend their careers too involved with the region. And so here I see the role of CLAS as developing with plenty of input from all kinds of different stakeholders, professors and students and others and staff, etc., bringing opportunities to learn about Latin America to the students. This in part means support for the professors to include content in their class. It also means developing new classes and programs, whether it's certificates or other kinds of things. This work requires, again, work at different levels at the university to make sure that there's room for these kind of programs in the student schedule and to encourage students to participate. And it also means working with the university to encourage more professors. We've lost a lot of professors in my own department and others, and a key thing for the university is to not lose that focus. Let me mention graduate students who are part of this conference for a moment, who have different interests and really needs. They need funds to travel and to conduct their field work. The university has pushed up schedules for graduate students to finish their PhDs in extremely short times. And this has led way too many students to focus on surveys or other readily available data to write their dissertations. And these are a cheapened form of dissertation in my mind. It is not the same thing as going and spending time in the field and really studying things. We need to find ways to get them to Latin America in the summers, to get them into the field so they can really do the kind of research, the serious research that's necessary to turn out top quality dissertations, not things that they can just do by staring at a computer screen. And their funding gets cut off, and we need to find ways that they have the time to go to the field and then come back and write their dissertations. That's a big challenge. Thirdly, let me mention community outreach. CLAS has traditionally worked in schools, doing everything from teaching Portuguese to letting students teach, Pitt students teach age-appropriate lessons to primary schools and things like that. We've also partnered with local organizations such as Casa San Jose, who are doing great work with the Latino or Latinx populations. We also have our big annual festival that I know Luz Amanda is running again this year, which gives the public a little bit of flavor of the region. Here the challenge again is funding, and it conflicts to some degree with the university. This part of the program traditionally has been run by funds from the federal government, and because the university says they value this, but it's not part of the educational mission, so they don't give us any funds to do these. This kind of leads me to this discussion about funding a little bit. There are some funds available to be raised, but it's a serious, serious challenge for a small organization like CLAS to be able to run the funding. Carmelo deserves an unbelievable amount of credit for getting CLAS started, but not only getting it started, but creating an endowment that he was able to help raise the funds from Ford Foundation and others that CLAS continues to use in flexible ways, which really makes the program go. And we owe him an unbelievable credit for that. Thank you, Carmelo. The university continues to support CLAS some, in important and in crucial ways. They give you, they pay salaries, they have office staff and space and things. But this hard money budget, as it's called, has been shrinking over time, and it has more and more limitations on how we're able to spend it. Federal funding has become much more difficult to get, and major foundations like the Ford Foundation don't support these kinds of things anymore. The federal funding, by the way, has really important strings on it. For example, the funds helped us support our annual festival, but the reason we never did Latinx is because federal funds prohibited it. We were not able to do Latinx or Latino studies by them. In short, it's a really serious challenge today for a new director to figure out new funding schemes. One that gives you flexibility to run the types of program that will serve the faculty and students in the programs that you want to run. Community programs. The hard part, to my mind, is that this is really, really hard. It requires specialists that know the funding game, that can be dedicated to it, and I think really full time. And with a small staff that's smaller and smaller all the time, that are asked to do more and more all the time, it's a real challenge to do this kind of the necessary fundraising. The last issue I want to address kind of comes back to what you said, Kayla, about the global studies push. This is something that's not only for CLAS, but in my department, the political science, and around the university and around the world. In our independent world and globalization, there's been a big push to do more theorizing and more global issues. And it's been a push away from the nuance and things about special regional focus. This can be really problematic. I saw Barry Ames is on here. He and I like to make fun of the international relations scholars who have these programs that where they tie countries together and focus on the probability of a war between them. So they might have, Luxembourg versus Argentina in their data set. I don't think we get very far by doing these kind of broad things without the specialized knowledge that we have here. To use Carmelo as an example, you couldn't study pension programs in general without getting into the weeds of how this works in particular countries and how it affects that it's affected by the socio-economic or demographic system in a particular country, and how its effects would be changed based on the political economy of country. We need people that know the details of a country and a region. This is also within USIS. USIS is obviously very concerned with this and interested in it, but it's USIS and the wider university as a whole and across the country. Carmelo was at the founding where CLAS was founded before USIS was. It was the first center. And as other centers came about, the university created USIS as a way to coordinate amongst them. The roles, though, I don't think it would be controversial to say that they've been slowly reversed, where now the centers are subordinated to CLAS, the centers are subordinated to USIS in a way that was not the way historically. And this change, I think it's not controversial to say, has created some tensions, but there's mutual goals between what USIS does and what the centers do, and there's obviously a lot to be gained by working together and working on common goals. So just to end up here, CLAS is a way to help build a community of scholars and make Pitt a really great place to come to work and to study Latin America. As I look back on my records before preparing this talk, and I saw really hundreds of students that we dealt with in different ways, that we sent into the field or invited to conferences or sent to conferences. There were visits by the Bolivian ambassador. There was visits by a Colombian student. The Mexican consulate came. We had traveling consular services for our community groups. We sent students from Gispia to study water pollution in Colombia. We sent engineering groups, which Luz Amanda got to go as a translator to Panama to work on their sewer programs. Local artists and photographers, and when Carmelo came back for a program that we did on that we did a book for about changes in Cuba just before Obama's opening, which was pretty amazing. And we celebrated too. We had the 50th anniversary where we auctioned off paintings by Eduardo Lozano, who was a librarian here and a wonderful painter for many years, whose painting is hanging in my downstairs in my house. In short, let me just say that CLAS has been a great place with a vibrant program. It's made Pitt a really great place for those of us interested in Latin America to study and work. Of course, CLAS has had to evolve over time, and hopefully it will continue to do so in positive ways with creative and energetic people like Kayla and Manuel and the rest of the staff there to be part of. And I hope that you're able to continue to reinvigorate the place and support the great work, and looking forward to, it's been a little more than 5 decades, and looking forward to the next 5 decades. And I look forward to being part of that. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And Carmelo, what are your thoughts that you'd like to share with us about the place of centers of Latin American studies in the US?
Well, first of all, many thanks to Keila and Scott for all those ideas. And I also want to begin my discussion by celebrating the staff of the Center for Latin American Studies. It was a tremendous help to me to have qualified people that also believe in what they were doing, and they felt strongly about the center and the Latin American program. And this has been a treasure since the program was established in 1964 by Blazier, which I follow. I also have to say that I have in large measure lost my touch with the field of Latin American studies because, of course, I retired in 1986, and although I continue to do research, and it's not the same as I was involved in the center. You learn a lot by being in an administrative position like that. So I may say something that may be odd. To start with a positive note, I think we are much better this year than the year before. First, because we are no longer, well, still there are people, but we are no longer in this strong isolation position in terms of the rest of the world from the United States. We have a different administration since heaven that is open to Europe, to Latin America, and is conducting international affairs in a much more courteous and reasonable way. So that's positive. And the second positive thing is hopefully this year the horrendous epidemic will end, and we'll be able to get together, because that being another isolationist factor, which I hope we overcome. Now, so I have some ideas, but mostly they were given by Keila, that provided me 4 or 5 topics to focus. And I have to say first that I am very concerned with what is happening in some key disciplines, particularly in my own field, economics. And this is not something that happened recently. When I was teaching, there was this problem in economics, and it is that the discipline is giving absolute priority. And I am not saying that it is not good to have the training, but giving absolute priority to theory, quantitative methods, and econometrics. When I was in the faculty, Pitt have one of the best constellation of area studies people. Not only Latin America, we used to be the most important program, But in other areas, such as Russia and Eastern Europe, Asia, Western Europe, and also we have specialists in Africa and on comparative economic systems. Several positions, including myself, Jan Schweiner, who was a prominent Eastern Europeanist, have never were, after we retired, never were appointed again. And I am afraid that this idea that we develop, that there should be an interconnection in the case of economics between mathematics, theory, and also apply economics policy oriented at the style of the London School of Economics, that, as I see it, is gone. It's increasingly difficult to hire a Latin Americanist in economics, and I think it's becoming also in political science and sociology. And I am talking about somebody that have a strong background in the tools of the discipline, but at the same time have an interest in economic development, in comparative economic systems, in social policy, which is a field that I have given all my life together with Cuba. So how are we going to hire these people? It's very, very difficult. I invite you to do this exercise. Take a look at the latest issue of the Latin American Research Review. You're going to find that the bulk of the articles, and this is good, is dealing with the humanities, literature, a little bit of art, and then you have history, you have anthropology, very practically nothing on economics, considerably less than before in poli-sci and in sociology. So how can we solve this problem? I mean, it's something that is beyond me. I don't know what to say. It's a matter of trying to educate people in these disciplines on the importance of having global views with the roots, as Scott said, in a profound knowledge of the countries in the area. I have worked a lot on Cuba, but my goodness, I mean, I have worked in El Salvador, in Dominican Republic, in Guatemala, practically Argentina, Brazil, practically all the countries in Latin America in order to be able to do comparative studies. And this is essential. If you don't have that knowledge, you cannot develop great designs and comparative studies. You need that. You need profound field research. And every time that I have been in Latin America, I can tell you that 2 weeks in one country in Latin America is better than 1 year reading books and articles. What you learn there is absolutely amazing. And in a very short period of time, because you are talking with people, you are exposed to the problems, you are discussing with other scholars, and this is a tremendously enriching. So that's a big task that you have, Keila, and I don't know, I have very little practical recommendation of what to do. The second issue is the interdisciplinary nature of the area studies. How many fields we have? I think like 20 or something like that. How do you bring these people together? I have that problem when I started, because I was in the center almost 20 years. I was 12 years as director, but I started like an assistant director and then associate director and finally director of the center. And I was trying to find an area where I could bring together the several disciplines a bit. And the idea came to me, well, what about if we do a big conference at the time where the first 10 years of the Cuban Revolution, and we bring people from all the fields, and we did. There were economists, political scientists, sociologists. There were people on cinema, on theater, on music. It was a book. It was divided into three sections: polity, policy, economy, and society. In society, you have all kind of humanities, and it was the first book that I published. I have to work very, very hard on it. I didn't just put all the chapters together. There have to be a cohesive whole in that book. And I truly hope this is something that I can recommend. I did it also with Scott. Bring one topic for discussion, and not only with the Pitt faculty, but scholars from abroad, from the countries and other parts of the United States that can be able to enrich the vision of that country or countries with all the multidisciplinary approach. I think this is extremely important, and I have a feeling, maybe I am wrong, or I hope I am wrong, but I have a feeling that effort to get this interdisciplinary vision is not the same that it used to be 40 years ago. I want to talk about my field because a lot of you knows about my work on Cuba. It's very, very interesting. There are people that know my work on Social Security, but they don't know anything about Cuba and vice versa. But social policy have been the passion of my life. And particularly because I was able to see the results of my work. As I said in the interview for the documentary, one of the great concerns that I have working so many years in Cuba is all this that I am doing, what is the impact on Cuba? What is the impact on Cuba? Eventually, I realized that there were things like pension reform in which either by their own or because of some influence, they were doing things that I have suggested many years before. But Social Security and social protection, I saw immediately the impact of my work. There are several countries, for instance, in Latin America that created the non-contributory pension financed by the state targeted on poverty. And that plenty of evidence that resulted in a significant decline of poverty incidence in all over the region. And now, virtually all countries have a non-contributory program, except for the Dominican Republic, as I mentioned yesterday, because it is in the law. It's in the 2003 law, but it has not been implemented. It will be eventually. So I was able to see the effects of my work. The other issue is, for instance, expanding coverage, particularly in rural areas, among peasants, in the informal sector, which is so difficult to incorporate and to affiliate. So for me, it was a tremendous satisfaction seeing that what I was doing have effects. Now we are in a situation now with the pandemic. Of course, the importance of healthcare, which is one of my fields, is even more than before. Of course, many countries, the whole healthcare system have been destroyed, and in most countries it has been insufficient, with very few exceptions, to confront the epidemic. So there is a field there that is claiming for work. And the issue of pensions that I discussed yesterday with the process of aging in Latin America. There are two countries that are among the oldest in the world, Cuba and Uruguay, but the other countries are following. They are not like Japan, but eventually in the projections, they will the oldest countries in Latin America will be like Japan. And so this has a phenomenal impact, both in pensions and in health. In the case of pensions, because as a working age population, as a productive cohort of the population declines or shrinks due to aging, you have less people that are able to contribute to the pensions of older people. But also in terms of healthcare, because people live longer, and this is positive, as pensions are positive. But that means that it's a financial problem, because the typical diseases of developing countries are the cheapest and the easiest to treat. As the country develops, then you have much more complex and costly diseases to cure, and people live longer. Of course, if they live longer, they are going to eventually face terminal illnesses, which requires much more resources because they are more complex. So I was so happy that I was one of the founders of social policy in the area of social security. There was nothing before I started this, but there are new challenges that give a significant importance to this field. And I truly hope, I don't think there is anybody except for the School of Public Health that is working on pension. For instance, there were several people when I was there, not only in Latin America, but in Eastern Europe, in Japan, etc., that were working on pension. And I don't know what the situation is now, but certainly this is a field that requires faculty and courses and field research. I'm talking about field research, and that was mentioned already by Scott. I was one of the founders with Scott Blazer of the field trip for undergraduates. This is one of the most wonderful programs that Pitt have had. And we are talking about not 40 students, a relatively small number of students, 17, 15, and they first take a seminar on dealing with the country that they are going to visit, and then they have to prepare a research project, and then they go to the field and they do the research project. It's an introduction to field research. And I truly hope that this continues. This is one of the programs that was most successful at Pitt. And I want to see that continue. Let me tell you that if you ask me, in addition to my wife, what has been the passion of my life, I will say Latin American studies. You cannot believe how I feel about this program. And not only the 20 years I was there, even after that. And still I am working because I love the field. And the final point that you suggested to me, Keila, was about cross-regional studies. And now, of course, you have Ariel Arbony, and you have a visiting professor from Mexico that is an expert in the field relations between Latin America and China. China have become the most important trade partner of Latin America. And of course, they have invested a tremendous amount of money, infrastructure, all kind of projects, different projects. So this is a field in terms of region that I think is important. The interest of Europe, particularly Spain and Portugal, used to be much stronger before the European Union. Spain, Latin America was the favorite region of the world for Spain after they entered, and I know the country very well. After they entered the European Union, it's like Latin America became a second thought. And the same is true of Portugal. So China seems to have a very important cross study with Latin America. Well, I don't want to talk more, but I have been a real pleasure to have this discussion with all the three of you. And Sheila, I truly hope that you have all the success in continuing the historical position of our program. And anything, this is not simply a formalistic offer. I am talking very serious. Anything that you want to discuss with me, I will be more than happy to do it. And if you have ideas, you want to talk with them, if you have a program, if you have proposals that you want to discuss with me, I am here. You know, my mind is fine. I don't have any problem with that. The body is something else. So I don't know for how long I will be able to help, but if I am moving and my mind is clear, you can count with me, really.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It's not formalistic at all.
I'll take the offer, and I'm glad that this is being recorded, so we all know, the whole world knows.
Well, you know, in listening to the three of you, I mean, there's so little I could add, but sort of trying to tie some of these, some of your comments and your perspectives together. You know, there's this idea of the multidisciplinarity or the interdisciplinarity aspect that a center for Latin American studies can bring together. That is really growing scarce, I think, in general, right? We seem to have there seems to be a general trend of making more discrete fields that don't necessarily relate, that are more insular, that at least in passing are multidisciplinary, but that in reality is, as you were saying, you know, earlier, you know, you can spend a year reading about Latin America, but 2 weeks will far surpass what you can gain from reading for 1 year about Latin America. And so the multidisciplinarity that seems to be more common is more of a sort of a box to check, rather than an actual in-depth approach to the study. And that seems to me, as I listen to the three of you, one of these essential aspects that is under threat, right? And because of whatever tendencies are surrounding us. And so to what extent do you think that this pandemic and this generalized global drawing inwards, what sort of an effect will that have as we you know, try to achieve this field perspective, this local perspective, and this multidisciplinary approach, you know, when we've been sufficient, quote unquote, indoors in our limited spaces, for a lot of us who are, you know, fortunate enough and who can do a lot of our work behind a screen. You know, for some people, it might seem sufficient and safer and a lot less risky. So how do you think, how do you see this year shaping the future of multidisciplinarity?
When I was studying healthcare in Latin America, I have to use a series of tools. I was an economist, but for instance, if I was studying a reform, I have to know some law. That was so useful in my career that I have a law degree and an economic degree. But also I have to learn about sociology because how are you going to approach certain healthcare programs if you don't go into the roots of this? I mean, what is the role of society in all this? So that was another. Of course, you have to have history in order to see what was the origin of healthcare program in the country. Some of them began in the colony. And of course, you have to have some knowledge about diseases. One of the things that I did for a book on healthcare and poverty is that I went to Mexico, and I spent 1 month into the countryside, and I was learning in Mexico about herbal medicine. And I have to confess that before I did that, I was a little bit skeptical about this, and learned then that there were even home industries in which they were producing tablets, and they have to graduate the amount of the herb that they were using, and for people who didn't have any access to modern medicine, this was helping it. That doesn't mean that it was going to cure cancer, but it was, for me, it was like a phenomenal discovery. So there you have 4 or 5 disciplines dealing with healthcare, and the same thing. I mean, my book on Social Security, it went into history. It have ideas about stratification of society. It has like economics. It have how pressure groups have a role in creating the programs, the first social insurance program in Latin America. How the military, with its power, still have in all countries except for Costa Rica because they don't have armed forces. How they use their power to get the best pension program, and the one in which they were paying the least. So I think that you can approach in a very effective and in an enriching way any topic in which you can use 4 or 5 disciplines at the least. And Keila, try to think about a topic like this, that you can develop an international conference in Pitt, and you can bring our excellent faculty that we have from different disciplines, and bring some scholars from abroad. And you know, the problem with this is once you do the conference, you have to edit the book. Editing a book, my God, I would prefer to write 3 books myself than editing a book. If you are going to do the right work, it's not just putting together the papers. You have to fight with the authors. I mean, oh my God, you have to eliminate duplication. You have to fill gaps. But I tell you, you will learn a lot. You have published, so you know about this. But this could be a blessing for the Latin American program in Pittsburgh, to bring all the faculty together and then get a book, a very good book, a very influential book. I have the book on Social Security. We have a conference there. We have a book on Cuba. We have a book on Cuba in the world. I don't know how many, the Caribbean, Africa, everything, and Cuba. So I hope I am able to go. That this damn pandemic is gone, and I will be there. I'm sure I will be fascinated. Do it. And also this, if you come up with a very good idea, that's excellent for a big fund that to finance this conference.
Okay, I'm already thinking about it.
I must say, you gave me the same advice, Carmelo. And well, that's why we did the Cuba book. And it was everything that you said, both really fun because we had people from all across the, both the world and in disciplines. We had people that were literature people and economists and political scientists and a whole bunch of people. And I think the conference part of it, that was absolutely fascinating, and we learned a lot from each other. And yet the other side, the editing the book, was an unbelievable headache and mess.
I know.
Because,
but
and I think, I mean, I've done 3. This one was even worse because the interdisciplinary nature of it meant that people approached the project from different perspectives, and trying to create a consistent perspective. I mean, we joked about, the literature people, just, they didn't see the world in the same way. So we learned a lot from them, but it was really hard to, I mean, I felt like I was wrestling with them, probably unfairly, to put them into the perspective that I brought from political science. So to partially answer, Manuel's question, I think we have to be a little bit careful, because there is absolutely a reason for multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, and those are 2 different things that need to be clearly separated. There is a role from them, and we learn from each other. And when, in any research project that any of us do, you absolutely learn a lot by going into other disciplines. At the same time, we cannot forget our own disciplinary specialty. And we take the depth of knowledge from our discipline, and we also have the demands within our discipline to publish within our discipline. There's very few interdisciplinary journals. And so there has to be a role, a lot of the grants from CLAS, for example, privilege people who are doing interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary work. But that's not the only work. We're trained within a discipline, and we publish within a discipline, and we learn from others, but we can't forget the disciplinary nature. Or we get to, again, the people that are just doing global stuff without any kind of, we don't want to, we want to know about Latin America and the world. We also want to know about political science and the rest of academia. So I think you have to think about the interplay. And just to, you asked us to put it into context of the pandemic. I don't have much to say about that, except for one small thing. One of the wonderful things that we're able to do, is that we've learned, we did this before, but we're doing this a whole lot better now, to have these kind of Zoom-based conferences. And we can bring someone into our classroom, or we can interview somebody that's in the other side of the world without even having to travel, which is just a lot cheaper and wonderful, wonderful. So that, I think, is one of the positive things that may come out of this, that we can do this better. It is not a substitute, though. We can't go back to making this the new norm, where people don't travel and spend the 2 weeks. That is so different than an hour on Zoom, where you're thinking about other things, and should I check my email or whatever. And so we need to be careful about that. But it certainly creates new opportunities for classrooms and other kinds of opportunities that we haven't really fully taken advantage of before.
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to thank for Scott's and Carmelo's advice for I'm still in Rio, so I'm still thinking about my challenges ahead. But truly, I'm really, really looking forward to be able to go. And just one thought about the pandemic is that I wouldn't be able to be working from here if we didn't develop all these creative ways to interact while the pandemic develops. But I want to make a comment about the idea of inter or multidisciplinary, which is the way that I see that is we have the knowledge is interdisciplinary, and as we can look at some topic, as Carmelo was saying, if I can find one, a good topic from multiple perspectives, but we are in our own fields because we cannot be specialists on too many fields. I mean, we can be specialists of many topics, but of course, I'm looking at things from the perspective of a historian, and you're looking from the perspective of an economist, and then Scott from the perspective of a political science, and that's what brings the richness of the knowledge we produce, is that the knowledge itself it's much better and much more interesting and much more rich if we look at this from different perspectives. But this is only possible if we gather the specialists in different fields and we put them together to have a conversation. I have, and of course there are some Leonardo da Vinci people that can, deal with so many specialties at once. But I do believe that we have to go deep in our own fields to be able to really engage and produce something new. And in that sense, I was thinking about Manuel's idea about, the pandemic, besides forcing us to be creative about what we'll do while we're locked inside, I guess that in terms of the public health and in the lines that Carmelo was also highlighting, I think that even though the pandemic is global, we have plenty to think about why Latin America is now the epicenter of the pandemic. And not just because it highlights the unequal inequality and the unequal resources, or just bring back old problems like hunger, or even access to internet and to computers and to Wi-Fi for students to be able to go to school, but also bring structural problems back, right? Not back because they're not gone, but racism and how it affects the different populations in different ways, how it's affecting indigenous people in a way that goes back to the beginning of the colonization. So it's a global phenomenon. And maybe we're just also going back to the China, or maybe we've also only defeated with the help of China, with the vaccines. But we need to understand, I think more than ever, what are the specifics of Latin America that it's making this so hard to fight. And then the topic of this conference, the public policies, are central again. What have we been doing in the past years that when such a tragedy, a disaster happens, were so unprepared in a way that we didn't have to be. So, I think we'll be discussing this for, I don't know, the rest of our lives, but for years to come. What this combination of the growth of the far right at the same time that we're facing a pandemic in many different countries in the Caribbean and South America, it's probably the event of our time and of our lives. So we'll keep discussing that. And I think that now we need to think about both maybe, or what's the role of the universities and the centers like ours in terms of producing knowledge and putting people together and making the students want to study this and want to specialize in this, and at the same time on how we contribute to develop public policies or initiatives that have real effect on people's lives, because that's why we do what we do.
Keila, one thing that you can do, which in my case was very productive, is to find excellent scholars in a particular discipline or field. And not necessarily these people have to be experts on Latin America or on the subject of the conference. They have to be good historians, good political scientists, good economists, etc. When I did the conference on Social Security, there was an excellent professor of Latin American studies, Jim Malloy. And he had done some work on Brazil. Mm-hmm. And I convinced Jim that he should do some work on Social Security. Well, he published a book on Social Security in Brazil that is still, I see, quoted everywhere. So there is this wealth of knowledge, Pete, And your task is to, convince people that they should move into some topics in which you want to do multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary work, so that these people then apply the discipline that they know so well. They have to have some knowledge of Latin America. It's extremely difficult. It was, but I won't exclude that possibility. And then get some people. Once they do that, then they are hooked in the topic.
Indeed. And I don't want to take away the recognition that some of the people that first of all, you, Scott, Kayla, Carmelo, the sort of level that and the insight and the perspective that you bring to this panel and your presence to the conference overall. Carmelo's documentary and the keynote address. I mean, we are truly privileged to have you among us. And without further ado, I want to cede the word and the last part, the closing, to Kayla Grimberg, our director for the Center for Latin American Studies. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Manuel. I get the privilege to close this conference. This has been wonderful 2 days of discussions. As I said, when we do what we do best, which is talking about our research, discussing, producing new ideas, and thinking about ways in which we can impact the lives of the people. It has been incredible, the participation of graduate students and professors and scholars. We had 31 panels with 46 presenters and 31 discussants, and over 300 people participating in those 2 days from 15 countries, which is the benefit of Zoom, and from 44 different universities and organizations. So I think this has been a huge success. So thank you. Gracias, muito obrigada, and I hope to see you in person soon.